The rope creaked like an old door in the wind. Two men stood on the platform, boots shifting against the warped wood, nooses brushing their shoulders as if eager for their throats. The crowd pressed in, a restless sea of hats and shadowed faces, the last light of dusk burning across Deadman's Bluff like blood on stone. The sheriff raised his hand, voice raw from too many judgments. You men stand condemned for lies, for poison in this town with words that ought never been spoken. No answer came. The schoolteacher's eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun dipped behind jagged cliffs. The farmhand bowed his head, lips moving soundlessly. No prayer, just a whisper carried away by the desert wind. Iron-shod hooves stamped below the gallows. The baron's riders lounged against their saddles, grins sharp as their spurs, hands resting easy on pistols. One of them spat tobacco into the dirt and muttered, "Won't be long now." A hush rippled through the crowd. The sheriff's hand trembled, whether from the weight of law or the eyes of the baron boring into his back. None could tell. The lever stood ready, waiting for the push that would silence two men forever. The condemned shifted. The schoolteacher leaned close to the farmhand, words barely heard over the creak of rope. They'll bury us deep, but the truth won't stay down. The farmhand's jaw clenched. Not if he's watching. Both turned their eyes, not to the sheriff nor the crowd, but to the high ridge shadowing the town. And there, dark against the dying light, a lone rider sat astride a black horse. Motionless, watching. A murmur rolled through the gathered townsfolk. Mothers pulled children closer. Old men squinted, muttering names, half believing they saw a ghost. The sheriff swallowed hard, sweat trailing down his temple. His hand gripped the lever. May the Lord. The wind rose sudden, sweeping dust across boots and skirts. The condemned flinched as the noose tightened with the shift of their weight. The crowd stirred, whispers sparking like dry brush. "He's here," someone said under their breath. The rider never moved. Only the glint of steel at his saddle caught the last shred of sunlight. The farmhand closed his eyes. The schoolteacher stared straight ahead, voice steady now, loud enough for all to hear. "You can hang us for knowing what we know, but it won't die with us." The sheriff's face twisted. He yanked the lever. The trapdoors crashed open. Ropes snapped taut. Gasps tore from the crowd. And still, on the ridge, the rider watched. The shovel bit into dry earth, striking stone with a hollow clang. Elias Boone drove it down again, breath ragged, sweat cutting through the dust on his brow. Two graves lay before him, marked by splintered wooden crosses, the desert wind keening across the ridge as if mourning alongside him. The sound of horses carried faintly from the town below, distant shouts spilling into the canyon air. Boone leaned on the shovel's worn handle, eyes fixed on the horizon where torchlight flickered against the sky. From the corral came a restless snort. His black gelding stamped the ground, ears twitching, sensing trouble carried on the night breeze. Boone tightened the shovel into the earth, the handle standing like a marker of its own. His gaze shifted to the barn. Through a crack in the boards, the glow of lantern light leaked. Inside, under canvas tarps and buried in dust, lay relics he swore never to touch again, steel polished by war, rifles with the weight of memory. The wind pushed to the barn door. Boone stepped closer, each stride heavy, boots crunching over dry gravel. He paused with his hand on the latch, jaw tight, eyes flicking once more toward the graves. The latch gave. Hinges groaned. Inside, the air was thick with the musk of hay and old iron. A tarp peeled back with a hiss of cloth, revealing the long barrel of a rifle dulled by neglect. Beside it lay a revolver, the steel catching lantern light like a buried truth clawing to the surface. Boone's hands trembled as he lifted the revolver, feeling its weight, its memory. A coyote cried in the distance. The sound curled low through the night, a warning. Boone turned sharply, eyes on the canyon rim. Shadows moved against torchlight. Riders. He drew a breath deep enough to steady the storm inside him. The revolver spun once in his hand, a motion practiced long ago, smooth as breathing. His reflection flashed in the barrel, older, lined, worn by grief. The gelding pawed again, restless. Boone approached, laying a steady hand along the horse's neck. "Not tonight," he whispered, voice a rasp of gravel and sorrow. "But maybe soon." The horse flicked its ears toward the town. A gunshot cracked faint in the distance. Then another. Boone stilled, eyes narrowing. He slid the revolver into the holster that still hung at his hip, leather-cracked but ready. The graves behind him caught the torchlight now, shadows dancing across the crosses. Boone lingered a moment, then pulled the barn door closed. His silhouette cut against the lantern's glow, long and jagged, as though the desert itself had shaped him from stone. The wind rose again, carrying the smell of smoke. Boone's eyes followed it toward Deadman's Bluff. His burden had returned. The barn door shuddered under the weight of fists. Splinters cracked. Voices outside barked orders, boots crunching across gravel, the hiss of torches spitting fire against dry wood. Inside, Elias Boone dragged the limp bodies of the schoolteacher and farmhand across the straw, their skin pale, breath faint, rope burns raw and purple at their necks. He pressed an ear to the farmhand's chest. Faint heartbeat. The teacher coughed once, shallow, choking on desert air. Alive but barely. The pounding grew louder. A bar of iron clanged against the door. One hinge gave way. Boone grabbed the water bucket, splashing both men, forcing air back into their lungs. The farmhand gag coughed and wheezed. The teacher's eyes flicked open, panic flashing until Boone's rough hand steadied him. "Quiet," Boone growled, voice low, urgent. Another crash. The barn door sagged inward, light spilling through. Shadows stretched across the straw, rifles raised. Boone's hand swept the tarp aside. The rifle gleamed, chamber already loaded. He cocked it once, the sound sharp as a hammer on stone. He crouched in the gloom, eyes fixed on the shifting light under the door. The first torch burst through, flame licking hay. Smoke curled upward, choking the rafters. Horses screamed in the corral. The door gave way. 3 riders stormed inside, gun barrels flashing. Boone fired. The blast thundered through the barn, echoing off beams. A man spun backward, torch tumbling in a straw, fire leaping high. Boone rolled, fired again. Another dropped, rifle clattering. The third raised his pistol. Boone swung the butt of the rifle, bone cracking under the blow. The man collapsed into the hay as the flames roared higher. "Move," Boone snapped, hauling the farmhand upright, dragging the schoolteacher over his shoulder. Heat surged against his back. The barn was an oven now, fire racing up dry beams, sparks falling like stars. He kicked open the side door, bursting into the night. Smoke poured after them, the barn a blazing pyre behind. Riders circled in the yard, shadows against firelight, eyes glinting like wolves. Gunfire erupted. Dust spat at Boone's boots. He dropped the teacher against the corral fence, lifted the rifle, and answered with thunder. A rider toppled from his saddle, horse screaming as it tore loose. The farmhand, weak but alive, crawled toward the fallen pistol of a dead rider. He fumbled, aimed with shaking hands, and fired wild into the night. The shot startled another horse, sending its rider sprawling into the dust. The flames roared higher, painting the desert blood red. Boone stood tall in the glow, silhouette carved from fire and smoke. He reloaded calm, steady, eyes hard as flint. Each shot cracked like judgment, dropping men one by one until the yard lay still but for the crackle of burning wood. The barn collapsed behind them, sparks flying skyward like a signal to every soul in Deadman's Bluff. Elias Boone had returned. Boots struck the dirt road, each step measured, heavy, echoing in the silence of Deadman's Bluff. Smoke still clung to Boone's coat, rifle in one hand, revolver at his side. Behind him stumbled the schoolteacher and farmhand, faces pale, eyes wide, shadows clinging to them like ghosts. The town square lay hushed. Lanterns flickered along the saloon porch where the Baron waited, broad hat casting his face in shadow, a cigar glowing red between his teeth. 6 riders flanked him, guns ready, their spurs catching the lantern light. The crowd lined the boardwalks, pressed close, breathless, no whisper daring to rise above the sound of Boone's boots. The teacher leaned on the farmhand, whispering hoarse. "That's him, the one they said was gone." The Baron stepped forward, voice slick as oil. "You made a mess of things, Boone. Should have stayed out on that dead patch of dirt you call a ranch. Now." Boone lifted the rifle halfway, enough to stop the words cold. His eyes burned with the same fire that still lit the horizon. One of the riders laughed sharp. Old Man's lost his mind. His hand twitched for his pistol. The rifle cracked. The rider pitched sideways, hitting the dust before his gun cleared leather. The crowd gasped, a single breath drawn as one. Silence returned, heavier than before. The Baron's cigar flared. His grin showed white in the dark. "So it's true, then? You were a soldier, a killer. They say you were the best shot west of the river." Boone's jaw tightened, the barrel of his rifle lowering just enough to free his voice. "I buried that life, but you drag it back." The Baron's men shifted uneasily, hands brushing grips. The crowd edged backward, boards creaking under boots. Then, the Baron spat, cigar ash falling to the ground. "End him." 6 guns flashed in the lantern light. Boone's rifle roared once, then dropped. His revolver cleared leather in the same breath. Fire spat across the street, each report an iron hammer against the night. One by one the riders fell, staggering, spinning, crashing into the dust. Smoke curled around Boone, each shot echoing like thunder down the canyon walls. The Baron stood alone, pistol raised, hand trembling. His cigar dropped, smoldering in the dirt. Boone's revolver leveled, steady as stone. The crowd held its breath. The Baron's shot went wide, shattering a window. Boone's bullet struck true. The Baron staggered backward onto the saloon steps, chest blooming red, eyes wide in disbelief before the darkness took him. Silence again, only the creak of a sign in the night wind. Boone lowered the revolver. The teacher and farmhand watched from the street's edge, alive because of him, their secret no longer buried. Boone turned, coat trailing dust, and walked away. The crowd parted, wordless, as if in church. The old storyteller's voice lingered on the wind, and they say, when the desert cries for justice, you can still hear the echo of Elias Boone's gun.